things first. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. It's not Monday?
No, of course it's Monday. That's how I'm laughing. Good morning, Jenna.
What happened?
Welcome back to town, Cris Carter. Steve, you're leaving me here. You're leaving me here. Good to see you, bro.
What happened?
Jenna Wolfe, nothing. There was a tissue on the desk. It looked used. It looked maybe like Jenna. Chris scooted it away with a highlighter.
When I look this way, I wonder how much goes on behind me when I look that way.
Magic
Clearly.
Johnson, little Magic Johnson, little no look pass.
Good morning,
FYI,
everybody.
those were holding a couple almonds. You have there's no one's going to get a cold from me.
Are you feeling better, most importantly?
I'm there. I'm getting there.
Good.
Yeah. Good weekend?
Great weekend.
Good?
Absolutely. A lot of fun. Playoff basketball. Chris went on a little trip. A good weekend.
He got a chance to go outside. I doubt with like 9.5 hours of basketball you got a chance to see
Not a lot
light
of time
very much.
outside. That is correct.
All right, well, I got that right. Sports bars were abuzz yesterday as the NBA playoffs were basically on for 9.5 straight hours. Two things I learned.
Did you visit a sports bar yesterday?
I did.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. I sit here and tell the truth. Here's what I learned about being in a sports bar, CC. Number one, they will, in fact, make nachos for you without using chips. And number two, if you're going low carb, when LeBron James says he's in playoff mode, he ain't lying. 32 points, 13 boards, 7 assists in a Game 4 win over Indiana. But last night, just a little more help from his friends. Not a ton, as the role players, a couple of them, in fact, finally stepped up. The series is now tied 2-2. Let's kick off this conversation with you, Cris Carter. How do you think the Cavs should feel after evening up this series last night? They did get a win. It probably wasn't the most convincing of wins.
There's probably a number of emotions they're going through. One, relieved. It's a shorter series now. Fortunate. They're probably exasperated with all the injuries, all the different lineups. So those are three just to start. They got to be feeling a little bit lucky.
Oh, okay, lucky.
I mean, if you look at last night's game, the potential of what can happen in the first round, there's no one think, okay, the Cavs versus the Pacers, they could be down 3-1. Like, no, that's not going to happen. So the inconsistency in the lineup, who's going to be hot, who's not going to be hot. At this point in the season, I can't remember in my recent history having so many question marks about a team that has championship aspirations, but don't know who's going to be in the lineup. We can't name really what their rotation is going to be. And if we say, we know what LeBron's going to do, who's going to be the number 2 and number 3 scorer for the Cavs? It'd be like, it's like picking straws. Like, you don't know. So the inconsistency and the lack of support from LeBron, like, that's what I've seen in this 4-game series. So I believe the Cavs feel somewhat fortunate that it's 2-2.
You use one of the 2 words I had written down right when I saw this question. I wrote relieved but concerned. So I want to start with the concern. What are they concerned about? Well, I mean, Kevin Love's been awful this series. He's supposed to be the question is supposed to be who's going to be their third star.
Yeah, not second.
Not who's going to be their second star.
Yeah.
Kevin Love's supposed to have that box checked.
Right.
He's been terrible. That they don't have a rotation. Tristan Thompson, after being a DNP coach's decision essentially for the first 3 games, he all of a sudden is the first guy off the bench early in the first quarter in Game 2.
And gave him some good minutes.
Gave him some good minutes, but they never saw the court again.
Yeah.
Like, so they don't know what they're doing with the rotation. They have been awful in third quarters in this series. Flat out awful. And on top of all that, we don't know when we say we're in a bad spot when the general consensus out of the locker room, at the podium, in the media this morning is, oh, the role players, as you put it, finally did something. And what that really means is Kyle Korver hit a few threes and J.R. Smith hit a 70-footer. Like, aside, and Jordan Clarkson had a good 8-minute stretch in the second quarter.
Yes.
Like, that's what we're talking about. So that's why they're concerned. Why are they relieved? Well, because now they're going to win the series. And at down 3-1, even if they came back from that, the amount of energy it was going to make LeBron expend, who, by the way, once again played the entire second half yesterday, was not going to bode well for them going down the line. They have small little pockets of things to be happy about. They've been up at least 16 points in each of the last 3 games. They look around the rest of the Eastern Conference. The Raptors are tied at 2. The Celtics are tied at 2. The Sixers finished their game, so they're not tied at 2. And their defense, and this is the sneaky thing, if you'd have told me Cavs-Pacers are going to be knotted at 2 games apiece, I'd say, the Cavs' regular season defense transition to playoff defense. This has been their best 4-game stretch statistically of defense all year long, and they're still only tied at 2 because the offense has gone cold right when the defense started to improve. So there's pockets of things to be happy about, and obviously LeBron's been brilliant, but right now they don't look drastically different than the team that scuttled its way to 50 wins in the regular season.
Both of you have now mentioned a number of times that they don't seem to know what they're doing with the rotation. The guys are coming in, that interesting rotations, head-scratching lineups are in there. No one really knows why, for whatever reason. How much of this falls on Ty Lue right now? Shouldn't he have a better idea of what actually works and what isn't working?
Well, Ty Lue's going to get a certain amount of blame. Never gets any credit for what's going on, but the players are playing bad. That's why you can't set a rotation, and because of the injuries. Those two combinations, Ty Lue, you can't blame him for that. If George Hill can't play, he's got to start someone else at the point. If the players are inconsistent, now the one thing that I did like late in the game, Ty Lue called a couple plays. One time, even when they didn't have a timeout, LeBron talked about it. They went to a quick pin down with Kevin Love and freed up Kyle Korver for a 3. And then after a timeout, they called a play and got him a good look that they were able to get another 3. But anytime you're coaching LeBron James, you're going to get blamed. But there's no way you can create consistency when the players don't respond to what you're doing and you've had the number of injuries creep up the way that they have.
Yeah, listen, I don't think Ty Lue's one of the 5 best coaches in the league, but I certainly don't think he's one of the 5 worst. The way he, I think, is portrayed by a lot of folks as if he's clueless. He has some things he's really good at and some things where he has some blind spots. I got very upset at the end of the regular season when he was running out a lineup that included Tristan and Nance and Jeff Green. It seems absurd to me to do that. But in the playoffs, the reason they don't have a set rotation is you can't find 5 guys that are playing well. It's hard to find 3 guys that are playing well. The Cavs have, other than LeBron, 2 guys averaging more than 10 points a game. That's Kevin Love and JR. Both of them, though, are shooting less than 39% from the field. So nobody on the team is shooting a high percentage on a high volume except for LeBron. And that's why LeBron has to play 46 minutes in a game that's in question going into the final seconds.
That 46 minutes, though, I believe is affecting his offense, especially in the third and the fourth quarter. He doesn't have the energy that you would want your superstar to have coming down the stretch.
And yet they still find themselves up 16 points a game a couple different times. So tell me what's happening in the third quarter. Is it fatigue? Is it that LeBron is just burnt out?
I think that is the quarter LeBron is exactly what Cece's saying. He's trying to save something so he has a burst left for the fourth, and he's been incredibly passive in the third quarters. It cost them in Game 3 Friday night, when they had the big halftime lead. LeBron was wildly passive in the third quarter. He then was able to step up in the fourth, but the game was they had already let go of the rope, so to speak. Like, I think that is the key of it, is LeBron is being passive in the third, no one else is stepping up.
Yeah, because he's trying to gear himself up for the fourth, but this team is not good enough. You know, to me, I'd like to see LeBron get a couple minutes rest in the second half because they need his offensive input at the end of those games. In the last 5-6 minutes of the games, you need him to be stronger in doing that and trying to play. I don't see the reason playing the whole first quarter. He came out, I think, the last 28 seconds, and then playing the whole third quarter. Somewhere along the way, he's got to be able to get a couple minutes rest.
Because how long can he sustain playing the second half the rest of the way?
Well, where they're fortunate is they now have 2 days off until Wednesday's game. Wednesday's game obviously becomes the new most important game of their season. I'd set the over-under on minutes played, assuming it's a close game for LeBron, at 45 minutes. In this next game, it would then be Game 6, where they travel and they only have a day off, or it'd be a problem.
Yeah, I think also that you very cavalier said it. Oh, the Cavs will win this series. I'm not convinced of that. I'm not convinced they'll win Game 5 in Cleveland because the games have all been so close. Even when the Cavs have played spectacularly, been like, wow, that's a positive. No, it's not. That's a negative because they had a 17-point lead on Friday, 16-point lead yesterday, and lost those leads. So, man, I'm still very, very concerned and wouldn't be shocked if the Cavs lost round number 1 to the Pacers.
Yeah, I would. Had they lost last night, I would be singing a very different tune this morning. That win last night, to me, is such a stomach punch for Indiana because now they are going back to Cleveland. They know that Kevin Love's not going to shoot 36% for the series. They know that, particularly at home, the Cavs role players should theoretically be better. And they know that in the first half of these games, aside from game one, Cleveland's dominated them. I think last night's game was, to me, the golden opportunity for Indiana. They had a chance. They had a lead late in the fourth
think Indiana
quarter.
has a lot of confidence against Cleveland.
Oh, I think they definitely have a lot of confidence against Cleveland.
All you got to do is win one game.
Yep.
Win one game in Cleveland, then you come back home, you can put them out.
All right, we're going to take a break. Coming up on the other side, how big of a deal is it that the Warriors lost yesterday? That's next on First Things First. Let's move on to the Warriors. Some thought the Spurs were dead. Warriors were supposed to finish the clean sweep over the Spurs last night. Plans changed when Manu Ginobili came off the bench for San Antonio. The 40-year-old wingman scored 10 of his 16 points in the fourth quarter. Big shot in the arm for the Spurs to help stave off elimination. As for Golden State, KD played well, but that was about it. Oh, and this little nugget. Before the game, Steve Kerr said, quote, Steph Curry is not going to play anytime soon as he continues to rehab his sprained MCL. Nick Wright, how much does yesterday's loss matter for Golden State?
Well, it matters in this regard. It's 2 less days to start the prep for the Pelicans, the full-on prep. It's one more game they have to play where there's 48 more minutes where someone can get hurt, 48 more minutes for something to go wrong, 48 more minutes for Draymond to accumulate a flagrant foul or a technical foul point. None of those things are good. And it does not delay the start of round 2. There was some people speculating going into the game, would the Warriors even try to win the game? Because they want round 2 to start as late as possible
to give Steph
because of Steph's injury. But whether they won yesterday or whether they win in 4 or 5, that next round will still start Saturday. The only way it would be delayed is if the Spurs end up taking this 6 or 7. Not a lot of good came out of this game for Golden State, except for Kevin Durant was good once again. But he's been good the entire series. To only be able to score 90 points, I know the Spurs have a good defense, but to only be able to score 90 points in what could have been a closeout game and give you a week off, I mean, there's no silver linings to pull from that basketball game for Golden State.
A silver lining, you got to talk about Klay Thompson. He's been amazing, too, in this stretch so far. So him and Durant, they're the really only 2 shooters they have on the court. So what does it matter to Golden State? Well, Draymond, he don't have any confidence offensively. Iguodala doesn't have any confidence offensively. Draymond's shooting 33%, barely averaging 10 points. Iggy, he's played a number of minutes. I think he's averaging 26 minutes. He's shooting 43%. So for me, they've lost their confidence. You could see at the end of the game, they were passing up wide open shots.
Yeah.
So for me, the effect long term on them, when they play the Pelicans, if they get through the Pelicans and happen to play in the conference championship, the effect, what it's had on these 2 players, forget everything else. All those other things are real. Every time you go out there, there's a chance for another injury. Every time Draymond goes out there, the flagrant fouls and everything. But the longer they stay out there with San Antonio, I believe that the Pelicans, they're able to gain more confidence. And I'm sure that Drew Holiday and Rondo are looking forward to playing the current backcourt that the Warriors have.
And you bring up Klay, and that was the problem yesterday, is with Steph out, when Draymond can't shoot, and Iggy, aside from the 3 threes he made in Game 3, he hasn't been able to shoot all year. When Klay goes cold like he did yesterday, 4 for 16, you have no offense. All of a sudden, the Warriors, it's an odd situation. But when they are playing a center, which, by the way, against New Orleans, they will have to do. So your center's not an offensive threat. Draymond and Iggy are not even being guarded on the 3-point line. Now, all of a sudden, you're down to 2 offensive threats. And one of them, in Klay Thompson, is not comfortable doing anything off the bounce except for going to the rim. He's a catch-and-shoot guy. It becomes a lot of iso ball. It becomes a lot of things we're not accustomed to seeing the Warriors do, which is, KD, go figure it out.
Right.
And it just, when Manu had a special fourth quarter, LaMarcus Aldridge played a solid game. The Spurs got a bunch of contributions from all their starters. And all of a sudden, you lose a game that you have no business losing.
Did you guys get a sense that this team was playing without a sense of urgency? It felt to me the whole game like they weren't crushing it. They didn't need the win. They were just going to play, and if they lost, it was just a loss. I mean, there's a team that lost 1 playoff game all last year, and it didn't seem to me like they wanted to win, but that they weren't craving
Well,
the
they're
win.
totally different when Steph is not playing. For one, they play at a slower pace, all right? And then also, Iggy and Draymond are a lot better players when Steph's on the court. Yeah. So I wouldn't want to insult a professional athlete and think that it's the playoffs and there's not a sense of urgency. You have to realize the tremendous amount of energy that's in that building. San Antonio is a world-class, not only coach, organization, team, but their fan base is world-class. That was, for them to be able to play as well as they did in these 2 games, given the death in Pop's family, unfortunately his wife passed away, like, I felt San Antonio played inspired ball because offensively they are challenged. So, no, I wouldn't say that Golden State wasn't focused or had a sense of urgency. It's the NBA. And San Antonio caught fire. They had caught fire in game number 3 the first half, couldn't sustain that through the finish, but they were able to do that yesterday.
Listen, the NBA playoffs are hard. Right? So, like, you look at the East, every series is 2-2 except for the Philly series. You look in the West, there's only one sweep, and there's only going to be one sweep. Everyone has at least one loss, if not 2. So I understand that part of it. So losing a game when you have an opportunity to sweep and you don't, all right, go get the gentleman's sweep in 5. I understand that part of it. But to trail the entirety of the game against an undermanned San Antonio team, and Steve Kerr echoed what you were saying, what you were alluding to during the game. We heard him mic'd up, and then after the game, that a lot of their regular season malaise, it seemed to affect them a little bit in this game. Now, I understand the Spurs played well. They were inspired. That might have been Manu Ginobili's final game ever in that building. Like, so he had maybe a little extra emotional push, not to mention the tragedy with Popovich's family. But for the Warriors, they have so much to gain by getting the sweep. The rest, the time, the prep,
there's no doubt they wanted the sweep. I'm sure. No,
but they just didn't. I can't believe, if you'd have told me the Spurs were going to win a game in this series, say, okay, I mean, I think I picked the Warriors in 5. But the fact that the Warriors didn't have a lead the entire basketball game, that's jarring to me.
Well, for the most part of the game, Kevin Durant was their only offensive threat. You talked about Clay shooting 4 of 16 this game. That dropped him down to 53%. Yeah, he was remarkable in 3 games. So they have one offensive threat on the court. That's how you get the result that they had yesterday.
And your point about Draymond being a different offensive player with Steph out there. Draymond this year with Steph on the court shoots 48%. With Steph off the court, he's less than 42%. And it's just everything is more compacted. And when the Warriors were the 73-win Warriors, that lineup of death, that death lineup, had 5 guys you were worried about shooting threes. They didn't have Kevin Durant at the time, but they still had 5 guys you're worried about shooting threes. Now, all of a sudden, even if you go to that death lineup, you know you're going to be undersized defensively. They're not even guarding Iggy, and he won't even shoot the unguarded threes. And Draymond will shoot them, but just hasn't been able to make them all year long. That's a problem for them until Steph gets back. And then when Steve Kerr says Steph's not going to be back for a while, it could be a major problem for them.
So, yeah, then that's what's a little confusing is before the game, I think we heard that Steph would be back in the second round, and then Steve Kerr comes out and says it's going to be a while. I don't think anyone really, truly knows what's going to be. So the team you see out there is going to have to take them as far as they can and not
I'm going to get y'all to
on
stop
Steph's
listening to all those reports.
I know.
What do you mean?
Because there's just too many reports come out. There's just I just don't believe they're reliable.
Would you listen to the head coach? Would that be the only one you would listen to?
Yeah, trying to respond to them on a daily basis is not the right way to go.
Well, I think whether you listen to the reports or not, I think that it's been pretty consistent, the messaging, which is that Steph's probably going to miss the first 2 games of the next round.
Yeah, it wasn't consistent what he said yesterday with him being out a while.
I would consider another week a while. I would consider if he's not out back there until game 3, that would be a week from Wednesday. That's 10 days. Like, I mean, I don't think Steve Kerr was alluding that he might miss the second round.
It's a choice that we can make. You know, it's information.
When do you have any gut? When do you think Steph's going to be back? I mean, I would think game 3 or 4. Yeah, I think that's the timeline that they've been saying. I think Steve Kerr was trying to push back on the idea that he could be back for game 1. That's what I read into his comments from before the game yesterday, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, and look, and if they do get past, we got to talk about the Pelicans and how they're going to start guarding or think about guarding Anthony Davis with the lineup they have right now.
Yeah, Drew Holiday, too, going to be a problem.
Well, the Drew Holiday is going to, and that's the reason why rushing Steph back wouldn't make sense for them. Like, if we talked on the phone last night, CC, about the MCL and coming back from that particular injury, if you have anybody on you, much less one of the league's best, maybe the league's best defender at that position, and then you mean Anthony Davis, that's going to mean they have to play a center. You can't play just Draymond at your 5 when the other team's got Anthony Davis out there.
No, it's going to be a problem. They have the hands full. Let them get through the series with no one being hurt, Golden State. But the matchup with the Pelicans is going to be an interesting, definitely their toughest second-round matchup they've had in this run they've been on.
No doubt. And the holiday part of it is, I mean, they're going to get a week to rest. They're going to get a week to figure out what every single thing they want to do against Golden State with or without Steph. They're already working on it right now.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, we're 3 days away from the draft. Sam Darnold is here in studio to go long, throw balls. No, I just talked to us. That's next on First Things First. Back here at First Things First. So the NFL draft is Thursday. A lot of pundits, a lot of draft experts, also a lot of just regular human beings have former USC quarterback Sam Darnold as the top overall pick. Darnold threw for over 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns his junior season at USC. And here's the best part. He's here with us now. Thanks for being with us, Sam.
Good to see you, man.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you
here.
so much.
Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you guys.
Sam, I would imagine you have gone through the gamut of emotions over the course of the last couple of weeks, from nerves to maybe a little anxious, maybe to excitement. Where is your head right now with the draft just around the corner?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nerves, a lot of excitement. I think it's more excitement than anything, though. It's really that kind of dream moment, and it's happening before my eyes. It's been a slow week, though, leading up to the draft, for sure. It's been every single day. It feels like it's, more than 24 hours. Every day it feels like 2. So just getting ready, preparing as much as I can for this moment. But on draft day, as we know, anything can happen. So I'm just, whatever happens, happens. That's what me and my family like to say. So
give us a little roadmap. We know you're in New York City today. Know you're going to be in Dallas on Thursday, on Wednesday. Probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Give us a little roadmap, because we know you visited teams. Where are you going from here until actually your name is called either number 1 or number 2?
Yeah, so I'm in New York for a couple days, hanging out, making the rounds. And actually I'm here on behalf of K Jewelers, which has been awesome so far. And then tomorrow, actually the next day, headed out to Dallas. Hopefully I get to see some of my friends that are able to come for the draft. And then do probably some media stuff there as well. So I'm looking forward to it, though.
I lived in LA briefly around the time you were getting to USC, or at least starting to take the field at USC. And a friend of ours, Colin Cowherd's been a huge fan of yours for basically since you got there. And so he had me read up a little on you at the time. People have been talking about you as a pro for how long? When was the first time people talked to you about you being a pro football player?
Probably after the Rose Bowl.
Oh, hold on. That's not
before
No. I don't. I mean, in youth football, when's the first time somebody came to you and said, "I think you can make it in the NFL. I think you can play in the NFL."
Probably youth football. I mean, just some parent coming up to me like, "Hey, you're a great player. I think one day you can play in the NFL." One of those, but.
The reason I ask is you're 3 days away from the draft. So everything you've done, it's now out of your hands. There's nothing more you can do. What is your mindset right now with 96 hours till you find out where you're going?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, just really excited. But at the same time, I don't know what's going to happen. But I don't think it's really in my. I know that it's not in my power at all. So I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about how I look and hugging my mom and dad before I go on stage. So.
Well, you look good, so now you don't have to worry. It's one less thing you have to worry about.
Appreciate it.
Look, this is an interesting year. You're from most people's perspective at the top of a very quarterback-heavy draft class, which is a very impressive feat. A lot of people have you going number 1. It's a lot of pressure on you, and you haven't even gotten the job yet, basically. Yeah. Are there people talking to you about how to deal with that a little bit? How to really, I don't want to say enjoy the next couple days, but your life changes the day that they call your name. But just tell me a little bit how you're sort of tempering a little bit of that excitement.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Well, not the same thing, but it's a little bit like recruiting. I mean, you go in and everyone expects you to be the starter right away, or at least that's what people tell you. And then you go in and you're humbled right away. You're in there with a bunch of older dudes who have been there for 3 or 4 years, and you go in there expecting to play right away, and that's not the case for me, especially. Redshirting and being under Cody Kessler was really awesome.
Yeah.
And then getting that opportunity that I had that next year to start and play well. I think this whole process is just about taking advantage of every opportunity that comes my way, and I'm just planning on doing the same thing.
Nice.
Sam, 5 USC players have been the first player in the draft. Every quarterback, especially the first 4 or 5, everyone says, I should be the first player taken. Realistically, you grew up wanting to be USC's quarterback. What would it mean for you, though, to be that coveted, the 6th player in USC history, which would give them the most, players taken to be that #1 selection in the 2018 draft?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, it'd be awesome to be that #1 pick, and with the teams sitting up there with the opportunity to maybe trade up, or the Browns where they're sitting at right now. I think everyone has an opportunity to win in the near future. So I'd be really happy to be the #1 pick, but at the same time, I can't worry about that, and I'm really just looking forward to being with the team that wants me.
What's the pros and cons to going to the Cleveland #1 or staying here in New York with the Giants, Jets, either one of those two teams at 2-3?
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to both. I'm not going to sit here and point them out, but there's definitely pros and cons to both of them. Yeah. I've been trained very well. Yeah.
How much of since you stopped playing has been training on stuff like that? Like how to not step in it? Because everyone wants to talk to you, and people this time of year are looking for one thing to tear someone down about, one comment or one thing.
Yeah.
How much of that has actually been time spent on training for things like that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of training that goes into it. I was trained really well at USC, though, with the media team there, being able to understand what goes into it and the answers that reporters are looking for, and they're really just looking for tidbits every now and then. So
let's go on the football field. What does Sam Darnold need to improve to take his game to the next level in the NFL?
I think just taking care of the ball, first of all, but then also being able to understand what a defense is trying to do to me pre-snap, and then really understanding what they're doing post-snap as well. So there's so much that goes into it, but I'm just trying to get better every single day, day in and day out.
Another follow-up, I have to ask you this. I think you're the best quarterback in this year's draft. I think you're the most ready right now to take over an NFL franchise. What do you think makes you different from the other 3 quarterbacks that are ranked all with first-round grades?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate it. And then secondly, I think, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I do better than all the rest of the guys. That's not for me to say. So, but I think I'm a very natural leader. And I also think that I like to give people hope in the locker room, whether it's how I play or the way that I act off the field, on and off the field. I think there's just something about me that's a little bit different.
Sam, next year at this time, you're going to be able to tell people you played in the same league with Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and the guys that came in before you and did probably exactly what you want to do, who stepped up, who were leaders on and off the field. Obviously, it's big shoes you have to step into to be the face of a franchise, which is most likely what you're going to be. Is there a guy out there that you sort of mirror your game after, who you'd love to try to follow in their footsteps a little bit with both what they do on and off the field?
On and off the field, not necessarily. I think on the field, I look at guys like Aaron Rodgers, the way that he plays, but at the same time, I'm just trying to be the best me that I can be, and that's really my goal as a quarterback. But I do, I watch Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Breeze, all those guys that do what they do every single Sunday, Monday, Thursday. So.
What about when you were like 7 years old? Just tell me, who's the poster you had up in your room over you had Tom Brady?
Brady, yeah.
Yeah, because Brady's 100. So when you were 7, you had Tom Brady's photo.
Cris asked you what you need to improve on. What do you think you're best at? What do you think is your best on-the-field attribute?
Following my instinct and really trusting it. And I know that sometimes it gets me in a lot of trouble, following that instinct. And sometimes, with especially taking taking my left hand off the ball and having bad ball security, and that's something that I've been working on. But there's also a lot of plays where I do take my left hand off the ball and I throw a touchdown or I make a big first down on, or make it third and manageable. So there's a give and take to everyone's game, and I think that's just kind of mine.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given so far from either a former player or a coach or a friend or your mom? The best piece of advice you've given that has really resonated with you?
Yeah. My parents just tell me all the time to just continue to be myself. Don't change for anyone. Just be you and be comfortable in your own skin. And that's what I try to do on a daily basis.
I'm going to ask you to be GM for a second. Sam Darnold goes #1 overall. You're the GM of the next team. Who's the quarterback after you? You're off the board. Who's your first pick?
I can't answer that.
I didn't.
No, I'm not answering that one.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, I appreciate the honesty. That
Yeah.
Have you developed relationships with any of these guys particularly?
Yeah, definitely. I knew Josh through college. Him being at UCLA, we had a great relationship. And then this offseason, I've become really close with Josh Allen. I actually, I had lunch with him in in the Newark airport the other day, so it was really fun. And, you know, just hanging out with him and getting to know some of the guys has been awesome. So.
Can you explain the relationship you have with Kay Jeweler and how your mom has been involved?
Yeah, I mean, just Kay Jewelers has been awesome. You know, getting ready for draft.
I think she's coming out. I don't want to interrupt you, but I think we're going to bring her
Okay.
out. Yeah, she's going to join us.
There she is.
Well, hey.
Hi, how are you?
Good,
Thank you for joining
Oh,
us.
nice to see you. I'm Jenna.
You too.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm just so honored to meet you guys. Watch you all the time.
Thank
First of all,
you.
how proud are you of this guy right here and the way he's carrying himself?
That's what I'm the most proud of.
Tell us.
You know, I will always tell you that he's a better man than he is a football player. You know, he's a better son. And I'm so proud of him. And to see him come full circle in his life and follow his dreams is just the most remarkable thing. My husband and I are just like pinching
yourselves,
ourselves
of
all over the
course.
place. Yeah.
Tell us about Kay Jeweler and what you guys are doing with Kay Jeweler. I'm familiar with Kay Jeweler.
Yeah.
They are the official sponsor of the Hall of Fame ring. I did bring my Hall of Fame ring in. I mean,
Nice.
the #1 pick in the draft don't warrant you that, but
I know,
it is
I
the
don't
road.
wanna- I don't wanna touch it.
It is the road for which
It's not like the
we
cover of
traveled
Sports
down.
Illustrated. You're okay.
So what are you guys doing with Kay?
Yeah, so with Kay Jewelers, I mean, we're just, you know, doing a little media tour, but
Okay.
we're also, they're very kind, and we're able to get my mom, you know, a necklace here, and getting ready for Mother's Day as well. So,
Very nice.
Isn't that
Yeah.
beautiful?
Love that. Really pretty.
so yeah, just getting ready for Mother's Day, and also getting ready for draft day. You know, biggest day so far in my life, and just getting ready for it.
Who's more nervous right now, you or him?
Oh, I can answer that question. I'm going to
yeah.
say you're more nervous,
Yeah.
right, as a mom?
And I think so, and I think throughout the course of his career, you know, at USC, it's just this feeling is real familiar, you know, because every single game and every single, you know, play, you're just
Everything's
watching
being
your kid.
watched.
And everything's being
Yeah.
watched, you know, but it's surreal. It's awesome, and he's wanted to do this since he was 6 years old, so.
Earlier than that. I
Yeah,
think.
okay.
Maybe, yeah.
So that story, he was playing soccer and like 6, and we drove by some older kids playing tackle football, you know, Pop Warner, and he made us stop the car. He goes, wait, you know, and it was some of our friends, you know, out there at San Clemente High School, kids, young kids, and he said, pointed at them, and he goes, that's what I want to do.
Nice.
And so
That's
he
all
hung
right.
up his soccer cleats,
And there it was.
Went-
That's
got
the
foot-
best decision you guys ever made.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
right there.
Congratulations.
Well,
Thank
listen,
you.
if you end up going to Cleveland, I hope you're following what the Cavs are doing right now. Like, I hope you're going to put a call into LeBron and just listen. We may actually be sharing.
Gotta
a
stick
town,
around,
so,
man.
Okay.
He got that must-win last night, which was huge. So
Absolutely.
You're already analyzing basketball. You're going to
Thank
be
you so
perfect.
much, man.
appreciate
Good
it.
luck to both of
Congrats.
you.
Thanks for everything.
Much success. Looking forward to seeing you guys.
Thanks.
Thank
Like
you so
Kay
much.
Jewelers, too. It's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
And that is beautiful. People
Thank
can't
you.
see it on TV. It is
Yeah, for all you mothers out there, our rich sons, go to Kay Jeweler.
Not yet.
Sam, good
Oh,
luck.
no, you rich. You want to borrow some money from me? You can borrow plenty of money from me.
Enjoy the moment. Take it all in.
Yeah,
Don't let
I
it
will.
pass you by. It won't come
you.
again. So both of
It's
you.
really nice to meet
There
you
ain't no
guys.
bad luck.
Oh,
You
it's
can touch
so
it.
lovely to
touch
meet
it.
you. We
You can
thank
touch
you
it.
so much for being with us. We got so much more First Things First right after this.
Thank you.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by NBA analyst Cris Broussard.
What up, brother? Good
What's
to
up,
see
my
you.
man?
How's it going, Cris?
It's great to be here,
Nice
as
little three-piece there.
always. Thank you.
We missed you.
We're old school.
We have a lot of basketball questions, and we did not have a lot of basketball Broussard in, so we are very happy that
It's a
you
lot to talk about.
All right, hey, remember when the Sixers' playoff chances were questioned because of their lack of playoff experience? That was hilarious. Sixers don't care about experience, they care about winning, and they won Game 4 to take a 3-1 series lead. Ben Simmons was the first rookie to have a triple-double in the playoffs since Magic Johnson, while Joel Embiid added 14 points and 12 rebounds. Dwayne Wade had high praise for the Sixers' two young stars.
They're special. You know, they're a good group, man. They put the right team together. I've said that multiple times. You know, ultimately, you know, sometimes the playoff become probably too big for certain guys, or you know, some guys don't know how to match the intensity of the playoffs, or whatever the case may be. They play that way already. They already play to that intense level.
All right, Cris Broussard, I'm going to ask you a simple, loaded, but not loaded, but maybe loaded question. Are the 76ers the best team in the Eastern Conference?
Well, look, I've picked the Cleveland Cavaliers to win the East, and I'm sticking with that pick. But if I was dropped down from Mars right now and I looked at the teams in the East right now, I wouldn't even think twice after watching them and looking at their resume as to who's the best team. I mean, the Sixers have everything. They got the best big man in the conference by far.
Yes.
Okay? They've got a great point guard. I could argue he's the best point guard in the conference, and that includes Kyrie Irving, who, is more of a scorer. They've got great three-point shooting. They're 5th in the league in three-point shooting since the All-Star break. They play great defense. They were 3rd in the league defensively. People overlook that. They don't understand it.
That might
They've
be
got
in front of is Joel Embiid, because people might question, East, but best center and some of the other things. That might be their number one calling card.
And people don't understand that. They look at them, their starting 5, and say they're not that athletic, but they're long. And they're smart defensively. Since March 1st, which is when they had this team intact with Ersan Ilyasova, and they got Marco Bellinelli a few weeks earlier, they have gone 23-4. That's the best record in the league. Not the East, the league. They're the only team to win 20 games in that stretch. And so the only knock against them, I don't know if it's a knock, but is inexperience. That's it.
That's real.
Which hasn't even really affected them.
No, it would be unprecedented for a guy in his rookie year, Ben Simmons, and Embiid is in his 2nd year of playing.
Technically, it's
really,
his 4th.
Yeah, but really didn't play much last year, only 31 games. Shaq Penny went to the finals when Penny was in his 2nd year. Shaq was in his 3rd year, but they had played more college ball than Embiid and Simmons and more pro ball.
Yeah.
So they're a great team. They're certainly the team of the future in the East.
One thing they did show me, and I talked to Nick and Jen about this last week, was people talk about inexperience. I was wondering how after they lose game 2, Joel Embiid starts to complain about not playing. They go to Miami. They get the big win on Thursday. Now, you've been in Miami. Yep. You've heard about Miami. They play a Saturday matinee. Now, that Thursday night and that Friday, I don't care how much experience you have, but you have to be a mature basketball team. And the way they came out and handled the Saturday, and it also, we didn't hear the stories about them in the nightlife. Yeah. To me, that showed a significant amount of maturity for a group. And you heard Dwayne Wade in the interview now. There's certain people that are just special. That experience is only a small thing when you put into the equation as far as pluses and minuses. So I did see that this weekend, and I was impressed with that.
That's a great point.
Well, and to your point, Broussard, I mean, the question is, are they the best team in the East? They are, I think, obviously right now, the best team in the East. Now, I also believe Cleveland's going to ultimately make the NBA Finals. I think Cleveland can present some problems for them offensively, and I think we saw that in their near 30-point comeback. But right now, I mean, how about just the last 20 games? They've won 19 of 20. You went back to March 1st. Since Christmas Day, they're 38-12. Plus the playoffs, so that would be 41-13. That's the 2nd best record in the NBA. Only Houston was better. Since Christmas Day, number 2 defense in the NBA, the number 1 point differential in the NBA. Like, that is an enormous sample size. And so when you just look at them with how they're playing, their one bugaboo in the regular season was effectiveness in the 4th quarter. That this was a team that blew a lot of 4th quarter leads. That offense got stagnant in the 4th quarter. In the playoffs, they've had an offensive efficiency better than 115 in each of their 4 fourth quarters. That's a top of the league level. Like, they fixed their one weakness, or at least they have so far in these playoffs.
Right. And one thing I was worried about with their youth was the NBA whistle. Would they be able to get the whistle? That's one thing that's helped them out in the 4th quarter, because Joel Embiid, they're not treating them just like younger players or rookie. He is getting a veteran whistle. Like, he's getting more respect than anyone in this series. If you look at the number of fouls being called on him, so that right there, it helps that inability to be able to finish in the 4th, because they're a great free throw shooting team.
You know what else? They're well coached. Brett Brown, I'm so glad they stuck with Brett Brown, because, he had to coach through that whole process.
Yes. And general manager didn't make it, but the coach did.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing, too. Like, usually when you bring in a new front office, they may want to bring in their own guy, or the stench. Even though you knew it wasn't Brett Brown's fault, all those years, The stench of that can sometimes cost the coach's job. But if you look at the sets they run, you look at his rotations, his substitution patterns, he is a very good coach.
So explain something to me. Both of you have nothing but praise for the 76ers. That their only knock right now is that maybe they have some issues in the fourth quarter and they don't really have playoff experience, which isn't even affecting them, and yet both of you continue to think that the Cavs are going to come out of it.
I'm going to be honest. It's just blind faith in LeBron James.
Of course.
That's it. There's no other reason for me to look at Cleveland and think, heck, that they may even get to the conference finals. I mean, they're not playing that well. They just have the best player in the world.
The Sixers are playing that well and as a cohesive unit, and they're not doing anything. You still think LeBron will somehow...
I'm not like totally convinced. But yeah, I'll stick with my pick.
What you put there is correct. Like, it is just unadulterated faith in LeBron. But on the Sixers, like, to go from being a team that struggled in the fourth quarter to, in this series, be plus 42 in the 4 fourth quarters they've played, to have won every single one of those fourth quarters. And in Saturday's game, like, it was the end of the third combined with the fourth. Miami had all of a sudden gotten a 10-point lead with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. I was watching the game with Dusty, who works with us. He's a Sixers fan. It was his birthday. And I said to him, most important 2 minutes of your season right now. Because the difference between being up 14, down 14 and down 7, that could decide the game. They ended up only being down 4 going into the fourth. And then they also were able to, in the fourth quarter, when D-Wade gets the rim to cut it to a 1-point game, run a beautiful play for J.J. Redick to get what I'm sure they hoped was going to be a 3. His foot was on the line, so it ended up being a 2. They executed late. They won a game that, if this series is 2-2, we're talking about it totally differently. They won a game where Embiid only made 2 shots, where Miami... where Philadelphia, was 7 of 31 from 3. To win that game, like to be up 3-1, that is one of those turning point games in the series, and we saw it.
Yeah, the one loss wouldn't have changed what I'm seeing in Philadelphia. To me, they're the best team in the East.
Are you picking them to get to the finals?
Yeah, I believe they're going to win it. Yes, I believe they're better than Cleveland. Like, I've been saying this for a couple weeks, and I'm going to go. I'm not a Martian. I've been here for a while, all right? I'm not just now seeing Cleveland play and just now seeing Philadelphia play. So I have, in my brain, it's hard for me to etch out the negatives and inconsistency of Cleveland. So Joel Embiid's ability to be able to dominate in the paint. And I believe they would crush Cleveland in as far as the rebound. You know, so I'm not a fan of inconsistent play, and I'm just going to grant them, you know, they're going to go to the finals because LeBron's been 7 times. I can't exit out of my brain just how inconsistent they are. And Kevin Love, man. Kevin Love is the worst number 2, the number 2 guy in the playoffs. If you look at the start.
He has been so far.
Well, what else I'm going to judge it on?
I don't think they treat him like a 2. I don't think they treat him like a number 2. I mean, he had 8 shots the first game. He had 2 shots in the second half of Game 3. They don't go to him. Their offense is just a mess.
Well, and I know we're going to talk more about Cleveland later. Here's the other thing Philly has going for it. When we just talk, I know the lack of experience is real. I've kept bringing up the 2010 Thunder, and then someone made a point. Maybe the better example is the 95 Magic. Or
yeah, but there is no one who has experience besides LeBron.
Well,
and the East is completely wide open. That's a good point.
And the point that I was leading to is, if we're ranking just players in the East, LeBron is 1, Giannis is 2. But are 3 and 4 on Philly? Is Embiid 3 and Embiid?
Well, Giannis is 2, but if I was starting a team, I would take each one of those Philly guys before Giannis.
But even forget that part of it. Just right now, this moment, they might have the 3rd and 4th best players in the conference in Embiid and Simmons. Like, I know John Wall's out there. I understand DeMar DeRozan's out there. Like, I know what Embiid is when he's healthy, and the mask will come off soon enough. And Simmons has been excellent this entire run.
Yeah, I mean, he's not better than DeMar DeRozan right now. I mean, like, we could talk about potential, but as far as the way DeRozan is playing, neither one of those guys are ranked higher than him.
They're such different types of players. I mean,
but if we're ranking all the players
Simmons,
right now,
I mean, I would take Simmons over DeRozan.
Moving forward, but we're talking about playing right now. The guy's playing excellent. Forget about the potential.
He's playing well. Game 2, he was, or was it 3 that he struggled a little bit, DeRozan?
I mean, I think Ben Simmons is playing great as well. And Embiid, forget potential. Embiid's going to either be Defensive Player of the Year or runner-up Defensive Player of the Year this year. But we don't have to parse it. The point is, we would all agree they have 2 of the, 6 best?
Easily.
2 of the 7 best players in the conference on one team. And the only team right now, with Kevin Love playing that way, that has 2 of the top 10 in the conference on one team are these 2 young guys.
Kevin Love had how many points last night? 5?
At 5.
5
He
points.
made 0 shots outside of 1 foot.
We'll talk
Ain't
about
right.
the Cavs. We'll talk about DeMar DeRozan. Chris, stick around. Coming up, can the Timberwolves, though, cause problems for the Houston Rockets? Haven't talked about them yet this morning. Next on First Things First. Back here with Chris Broussard on First Things First. We're going viral. So LeBron dropped 32 last night to join Michael Jordan as the only players with 130-point playoff games. The King making his case for the GOAT over MJ. But if you ask Allen Iverson, oh, there's another name to consider.
What bothered me is when they do talk about it, LeBron is great, first of all. When they talk about comparing him to Mike, I don't understand how they don't have the debate when it comes to Kobe. Like I don't get it. I mean, what you forgot or something? What they forgot?
That's what I'm saying. Talk to me, please. Talk to me.
I really think they forgot. Like I really think they forgot. The Mamba, man, certified serial killer, man.
That's what Chris Broussard always says, is that if you talk to players hold Kobe in a much higher regard than, not that the media doesn't hold him in a high regard, but players have him on the LeBron Jordan tier more so than folks that do this for a living, right?
I've talked to more players who would put Kobe ahead of LeBron than vice versa.
Kobe ahead of
than
LeBron ahead of
MJ,
okay.
But they always say what Allen Iverson said. What about Kobe? Y'all just skipping over Kobe?
When you met me, didn't I tell you the same thing, Nick? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, I've been a huge Kobe fan. Got Kobe's warm-up with the Lakers with my name on it. Man, I've been a huge Kobe fan. The 5 rings, the scoring, the defense.
But would you include him in the conversation?
Kobe ahead of LeBron?
I'm just going to say Kobe should have been part of the conversation. LeBron's numbers right now, you have to say, okay, is this regular season and the totality of the numbers, is that what's better than Kobe? Because for me, Kobe winning 5 championships to me supersedes where LeBron is right now.
But we talk about LeBron, you always say one of the 3 greatest players ever. Like Kobe's, we don't have to do a Kobe LeBron debate right now. I think it is noteworthy that the players themselves have Kobe. Barkley talks about it all the time.
Jimmy Jackson talked about when he sat right here.
Right. The players, and I think it's because having to guard Kobe was so, and you knew what he was, that you knew he was going to shoot, you knew what he was going to do, and you couldn't stop it to a degree.
Iverson said it. They think Kobe is more of a killer.
Yes.
That's what it boils down to. Statistically, he can't come close to LeBron, not just because of longevity, because Kobe had longevity, but per game, points, rebounds, assists, efficiency, shooting percentage, all that.
All of it.
But they think he is more of a dog and a killer. It's as simple as
Let's
that.
get Kobe out here. Kobe, come out here and fend yourself. All right, let's move on. A shootout. A shout-out also to our Minneapolis friends watching. Playoff basketball is back in your town for the first time since 2004, and it went according to your plan. The T-Wolves pulled off what most people thought was the improbable, upsetting the Houston Rockets, 121-105. How about Jimmy Butler leading the way with 28 points? Houston Rockets head coach Mike D'Antoni was critical of his team the following day.
I'd say a couple months we haven't played real well. And that's what I was worried about the whole time, about resting guys and doing this and getting out of rhythm. And it doesn't really mean a whole lot. Well, yeah, it does, So anyway, we are where we are, and then we'll be fine. We'll be okay.
All right, well, Coach isn't that worried. Should the Rockets be concerned after dropping Game 3?
I feel like I went by a used car, a salesman right there, and he was trying to sell me something. The car got 100,000 miles on it. Don't need no warranty, but I'm going to be okay. That's what he sounded like.
He did sound like that. I mean, the way he came off, no question. But look, I'm with him. I would not be worried. Look, you don't always run through the playoffs.
No.
People, in 2008, when Boston won its first title, or its only title with the Big Three, they went 7 games in round 1, 7 games in round 2, 6 games in the conference finals, and then, of course, beat the Lakers in the championship. So, you can have these struggles, but they obviously need to come out and win tonight. If you lose this game, then you need to be concerned.
Yep, it's a series.
If I'm looking at the Rockets, now, they shouldn't feel this way, and they shouldn't necessarily talk about it, but as a fan or as a person on the outside, there were 3 questions I had about the Rockets, and I think most people going into the playoffs. is James Harden going to be clutch and play better in the postseason or as well as he did in the regular season, because he hadn't done that historically? Is Chris Paul going to struggle under the strain of the clutch playoff moments like we've seen him do in the past? And then Mike D'Antoni, who's had great regular season teams most of his career and never been able to get over the hump to the finals. I think we've seen evidence of some of those things. I mean, Chris Paul, game 1, 6 turnovers. The late turnover, he threw it out of bounds, could have cost him the game. James Harden, I believe, in games 2 and 3 is 10 or 11 for 39 from the field. So he has not been the player he was in the regular season. And then Eric Gordon, who I didn't include in that, earlier spiel, he has not been himself. He's your third leading scorer.
Yes.
He was great in the regular season.
He was one of the reasons why they were special.
Yes.
Well,
and he has not been special in the playoffs.
Listen, people should never underrate how hard it is for a team up 2-0 that has home court to go on the road in Game 3 and win that game, because that is the biggest game for your opponent they will play all year long. That's the difference between keeping your season alive and being down 3-0 and the series being over. Those games are always the most difficult games in a series, and the Timberwolves played like it. To the concerns about Harden and Chris Paul, I think they're overstated only to this degree. I think Chris Paul's had one bad game in this series, Game 1. I think James Harden's had one bad game in this series, Game 2. That was the 2 for 18. I think, obviously...
Game 3 was 9 for 21.
Right, but that's
horrible game,
and that's not that far off his season average. He's, I think, 45% for the year, 9 for 20.
Yeah, when you watch the game, he just wasn't clutch. Didn't look like himself during the regular season.
Absolutely, and the Timberwolves were in control of that basketball game. And so what it comes... Tonight is... the biggest game this unit has ever played together, without any question. Because you go up 3-1, you go back to Houston, complete the gentleman's sweep. There's no problem. You feel great about it with a tough first-round opponent. But you lose tonight. Then all of a sudden you go back to Houston feeling that pressure starting closing in on your neck. And you mentioned Eric Gordon. But it's not just Eric Gordon. Gordon, Ariza, P.J. Tucker in this series, shooting combined 26 shots per game on right at 26%. Combined. Think about that. Like, those are 3 guys they had relied on the entirety of the year. That's been a critical part of this as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because now with them trying to get Ryan Anderson back into the flow, how many minutes do they give him? You can tell that they miss Belamute, right? Is that right?
Belamute, yep.
All right, miss him.
Yeah.
Like, because he is such a utility player. Good offensive player, can guard on the wing, can also switch out on big. So their rotation is a little bit off, but we shouldn't be alarmed. They haven't played a playoff game in Minnesota since 2004. To be able to win the first one with the enthusiasm in that arena, like, we shouldn't just jump into a panic because of that. Like, they could beat any team in the NBA up there. When you don't play that type of playoff game, you have that type of energy. So let's not overreact to game number 3. But this is not the Houston team that we saw win 65 games.
Why?
They haven't been consistent. They haven't put together 3 or 4 quarters in the game. In the first, they could have lost game number 1.
Yep.
All right? They really played well in game number 2, and then they lose in game number 3. So we have enough of a sample size to know that Minnesota is a legitimate opponent for them. They do present some problems, and Minnesota hadn't played just stellar basketball to be able to get to 2-1. Right. So they can improve.
Well, and you made a great point. This is not a typical 8th seed.
No.
I mean, they were, when Jimmy Butler was healthy, they were in the 4th spot. They're back. They could have got the third spot. And really, from 3 to 8, it was so close in the West anyway that, this is a legitimately good team with some great players. So
I think the Rockets are going to be fine. Here is the biggest level of concern that we haven't touched on. Karl-Anthony Towns yet to have a big game.
Yep.
Like, if Karl-Anthony Towns might have a 35 and 18 game.
That's what I was going to say. If he plays well, you should get concerned in a hurry.
Right, because that hasn't happened yet, and they're only down 2 games to 1.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.